I exposed my sister's therapy journal at her engagement party after she told everyone I was faking my depression, and now she has been abandoned by everyone, including her fiancé. Hey Reddit. So, this is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My sister lurks on this site, and I've changed some names and minor details for privacy, but I really need to get this off my chest. Some background: I'm a 26-year-old woman who works as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm. For most of my life, I've struggled with depression. Not the kind where you just feel a little sad sometimes, but the kind that knocks you off your feet and makes getting out of bed feel like climbing Mount Everest with a refrigerator strapped to your back. I've been in therapy since college, taking medication, and even spent 2 weeks at LaSalle at Soberbelling Hospital when things got really bad during my sophomore year. That was rock bottom for me. I was basically non-functional, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just staring at walls and feeling like I was drowning in quicksand while everyone around me was walking on solid ground. It's been a long road, but I've worked hard to get to a place where I feel somewhat stable. I have good days and bad days, but I've developed coping mechanisms that usually work. I have this weighted blanket that feels like a hug when things get rough, and my therapist taught me this grounding technique where I name 5 things I can see, 4 I can touch, 3 I can hear. You get the idea. It doesn't fix everything, but it helps. My older sister, Lena, is 29 and has always been the golden child of our family. She's tall, blonde, charming, outgoing, and effortlessly likable. You know the type: walks into a room and immediately becomes the center of attention, remembers everyone's names, laughs at all the right moments. People naturally gravitate toward her, and she knows how to work a room like a professional politician. We've never been close, but there was never any outright hostility between us either. Just a quiet tension. Like two people forced to tolerate each other at a job they both secretly hate. We'd exchange pleasantries at family gatherings, occasionally text each other memes, but that was about it. I live in a small apartment with my cat, Mocha, who's basically my emotional support animal, not officially, but she might as well be. She's this sassy tortoiseshell who yells at me when I don't get out of bed on time and sleeps on my chest when I'm having a bad day. Lena lives across town in a fancy high-rise with her fiancé David, well, ex-fiancé now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Our parents never took mental health seriously. When I was younger, they would tell me to snap out of it whenever I showed signs of struggling. My mom would say things like, "What do you have to be sad about? We put food on the table and clothes on your back." My dad's go-to was, "In my day, we didn't have time to be depressed. We just worked harder." They thought I was being dramatic. Just fishing for attention. The worst part? I started to believe them. I spent years wondering if maybe I was just weak. Maybe I wasn't really depressed, just lazy, just fragile, just effective in some fundamental way that other people weren't. I'd look at Lena, who seemed to have her life together, and wonder why I couldn't just be like her. It wasn't until I was in college and hit rock bottom that I finally sought help on my own. My roommate at the time, Jamie, found me crying in our bathroom at 3 a.m. and basically dragged me to the campus counseling center the next day. That was the first time a professional looked me in the eye and said, "What you're experiencing is real, and it's not your fault." I still remember the relief I felt, like I could finally breathe after years of holding my breath. Fast forward to a few months ago. Everything took a turn for the worse at my cousin Kate's baby shower. I wasn't feeling great that day: too many people, too much noise, that overwhelming sense of isolation even in a crowded room that fellow depression sufferers will recognize. So I left early. No big deal, or so I thought. A week later, I started noticing the shift. My Aunt Carol, who had always been warm and supportive, suddenly started giving me these weird looks, like she was trying to figure me out. My Uncle Bob, who usually gave me big bear hugs, barely acknowledged me at Sunday dinner. My younger cousins made offhanded jokes about me being so delicate and such a drama queen. I had no idea what was happening until my cousin Tyler let it slip while we were loading the dishwasher after dinner. "You know," he said, not quite meeting my eyes, "Lena told everyone you've been faking your depression for attention. She said your therapist told you there's nothing wrong with you, but you keep pretending anyway." My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched. The room started spinning, and I had to grip the counter to stay upright. Lena had told everyone I was faking my depression. That I had just been making up my struggles for sympathy. That I was one of those people who cry mental health to avoid responsibilities. I confronted her over text that night, my hands shaking so hard I could barely type. "Why would you tell everyone I'm faking my depression?" I wrote. "You know how hard it's been for me." Her response? You take everything so seriously." I was just making conversation. If people believe everything they hear, that's on them. No apology. No regret. Just a casual brush-off. As if she hadn't just destroyed what little credibility and support I had in our family. After that, family gatherings became unbearable. If I even mentioned feeling down or having a rough day, my mother would change the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. My father just told me to let it go and not dwell on the past. But the damage was done. No matter what I said, no one believed me anymore. Then came Lena's engagement announcement. She and her boyfriend David had been together for 5 years. He was everything she wanted: successful real estate developer, well-liked, from a well-off family that owned half the property in our town. The guy drives a Tesla and has one of those watches that costs more than my rent. He's actually not a bad dude though, which makes this whole situation even weirder. The engagement was a huge deal, and naturally, our parents wanted to throw an extravagant party. I was expected to be there, smiling and playing the role of the supportive sister. My mom literally said, "Please don't make this about your issues." She couldn't even say the word depression out loud. I vented to my best friend, Mira, about everything. We were at our favorite coffee shop, the one with the amazing banana bread and the barista who always draws little cats in my latte foam because he knows I love them. Mira was furious, even more than I was. "She's projecting," Mira told me, stabbing her straw into her iced coffee with unnecessary force. People who go that hard trying to discredit someone else's pain, they're usually hiding their own. I brushed it off at the time, but her words stuck with me. Could Lena be dealing with her own issues? It seemed impossible. She was always so put together, so confident. The girl who had color-coded planners in high school and never seemed to struggle with anything. A week before the party, something happened that changed everything. I was at our parents' house, staying the night because I had an early morning dentist appointment nearby. My dentist is right around the corner from their place, and morning rush hour traffic in our city is a nightmare. While looking for a charger in the guest room, formerly Lena's room, I opened a nightstand drawer and noticed a small leather-bound notebook beneath a stack of old mail and random papers. At first, I ignored it. But when I went to close the drawer, curiosity got the best of me. It was a therapy journal. At first, I hesitated. It wasn't mine to read, and I'm not usually the snooping type. But after everything Lena had done, after the way she turned our entire family against me, I opened it, skimming the first few pages. What I saw shocked me to my core. The pages were filled with her deepest thoughts, insecurities, fears, self-loathing. She wrote about feeling empty, about putting on a show for everyone around her. About struggling with the exact same thing she had mocked me for. Session 12, Dr. Marken says I need to acknowledge my feelings instead of burying them. Easy for him to say. If people knew how broken I feel inside, they'd never look at me the same way again. Session 19, had another panic attack last night. David was working late. Sat in the shower for an hour just trying to breathe. Why can't I just be normal? She had been in therapy for years. Longer than me, from the dates in the journal. I closed the book, my hands shaking. The same person who had convinced everyone I was faking my depression had been battling her own demons in secret. She had therapy. She had an outlet. But she made sure I had nothing. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the journal. I wanted to confront her, throw it in her face, make her explain herself. But then a different thought crept in. The engagement party was in a few days. She had humiliated me, destroyed my credibility with our family. Maybe it was time she got a taste of her own medicine. I wasn't planning anything specific yet. But one thing was certain, this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. The engagement party was held at an upscale banquet hall downtown. You know the type: high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a live string quartet playing softly in the background. The kind of place where everyone sipped champagne and acted like their lives were perfect. I wore a navy blue dress I'd splurged on at Nordstrom Rack, 3 pay periods worth of saving up, and did my makeup extra carefully to hide the fact I'd barely slept the night before. As soon as I walked in, I felt the weight of the stares. Family members barely acknowledged me. Some didn't even bother to hide their disapproving looks. It was clear Lena's lie had worked. To them, I was the fragile, attention-seeking sister who made up sob stories to get sympathy. I spotted Lena almost immediately. She was standing in the center of a group, laughing effortlessly, glowing under the attention in her cream-colored designer dress. Her hair was styled in loose waves, her makeup flawless. The moment our eyes met, she glanced at me briefly, then turned back to her conversation, dismissing my presence without a second thought. David, her fiancé, stood beside her, completely oblivious to the undercurrents. He was tall, clean-cut, with the kind of smile that probably got him elected class president in high school. He gave me a friendly wave when he saw me, and I felt a twinge of guilt about what I was considering. David had never been anything but nice to me. As I made my way through the room, I caught snippets of conversation. A couple of our cousins were talking near the buffet table, their voices low but not low enough. "It's so weird how mental illness is trendy now," one of them said, picking at a stuffed mushroom. "Like, remember how she always acted like she had it so bad?" The other one snickered. "Some people just love being the victim." I clenched my jaw but kept walking. The comments didn't stop there. 2 of my aunts were murmuring by the bar, their expressions vaguely amused. I just think if you're really struggling, you wouldn't be posting about it, you know? Some people just love drama. Lena had made sure I became a joke, and everyone had happily played along. Dinner was served, and the atmosphere buzzed with energy as guests found their seats. I was placed at a table far from the bride and groom, with distant relatives who kept giving me side eye. I picked at my $75 a plate salmon, barely tasting it, the journal burning a hole in my purse. The toast started soon after. Lena's best friend stood first, talking about how Lena and David were the perfect match, how they never fought, how Lena was the most genuine person she knew. I nearly choked on my champagne at that one. David's father followed with a few words about love and commitment. Everything was going smoothly. Then Lena stood up. She lifted her glass, a confident smile on her face. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It means so much to us, she said, pausing for dramatic effect. Then she turned her gaze toward me, eyes glinting with something sharp. And to my dear sister, may she one day find something real to be sad about. A few guests chuckled hesitantly. Others shifted uncomfortably. But Lena just grinned, taking a sip of champagne like she had just made the joke of the night. I had come here planning to stay quiet. Maybe confront her in private. Tell her to her face that I knew the truth. But as I sat there, hearing the quiet laughter, seeing the way she still had everyone wrapped around her finger, something inside me snapped. I reached into my bag and pulled out the therapy journal. I waited for a lull in the conversation, then stood and made my way to the front of the room where the toasts had been given. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my resolve was stronger. I tapped a glass for attention, my voice clear and steady. Since we're being honest tonight, let's talk about mental health. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd as conversations quieted and eyes turned toward me. Lena's expression faltered, her eyes narrowing as she realized what I was holding. What are you? I flipped the journal open and started reading. The first passage was raw, unfiltered, a confession of sleepless nights, panic attacks, the fear of not being enough. She wrote about how exhausting it was to pretend everything was fine, about crying in her car between meetings so no one would see her break. The room went silent. Lena shot up from her chair, face pale. She lunged forward, trying to snatch the book from my hands, but I stepped back, continuing to read. I can't keep doing this. Sometimes I think about just disappearing. No one knows the real me. If they did, they'd all leave. Gasps echoed through the hall as I continued reading. Page after page of insecurities, anxieties, proof that the same sister who had mocked me had been struggling in silence. The same person who convinced our family that I was faking had been writing about her own fear of being exposed as weak. David's expression darkened. He glanced between Lena and me, his voice measured but tense. Is this true? Lena stiffened, her face caught between shock and anger. This is private, she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. She had no right to read it. David hesitated, visibly unsettled, before quietly saying, "We'll talk about this later." His gaze was unreadable as he stepped away. Lena's voice wavered, but the damage was done. The whispers started. Guests exchanged glances, some looking outright horrified. The same aunts who had dismissed me now looked uneasy. The cousins who had mocked me suddenly avoided my gaze. The illusion of Lena's perfect life cracked right in front of them. David stepped back from her, his jaw tight. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the party. Lena's breath hitched. She turned to me, eyes wet with fury and humiliation. You had no right. I met her stare. Neither did you. More whispers. More shifting in seats. The reality of what she had done was sinking in. She had spent months making me the villain. And now, in the space of a few minutes, the roles had reversed. Her hands trembled as she glanced around the room, realizing she had lost control. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed out, pushing past guests, her composed image completely shattered. I didn't wait for the aftermath. I grabbed my bag and walked out before anyone could say anything. Lena had built her entire life on appearances. Tonight, I had torn it all down. But something told me this wasn't over yet. By the next morning, the engagement party disaster had exploded far beyond the banquet hall. Lena wasted no time trying to rewrite the story. Her Instagram, where she has 12K followers due to her PR job connections, was flooded with dramatic posts, paragraphs about betrayal, family turning against family, and how some people just live to destroy happiness. She left out the part where she had humiliated me in front of our entire family first. Instead, she painted herself as the victim, the heartbroken bride whose engagement night was ruined by a jealous, vengeful sister. Comments started pouring in from her friends, offering their sympathy. Some went as far as to say that they always knew I was unstable. Others called me cruel, saying I had no right to expose her like that. But something interesting happened too. People started asking questions. They weren't just blindly defending her. Some of her own friends were pointing out how she had been the one making fun of my mental health for months. A few even said they were shocked that she had a therapy journal at all, given how often she dismissed therapy as overrated in their group chat. By midday, my inbox was full. Some relatives, mostly the ones who had always been closer to Lena, accused me of taking things too far. They insisted that I should have been the bigger person, that it was just a joke, and I should have let it go. But others reached out quietly, admitting they never believed her in the first place. A few cousins messaged me saying they had always thought something was off about how Lena treated me, but they had been too afraid to speak up against the golden child. The biggest surprise came when David, her fiancé, called. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me of anything. His voice was calm, almost detached. He asked if the journal was real, if Lena had really been in therapy all these years without telling him. I told him the truth, that I had found it at our parents' house, that I hadn't even planned to read it until she pushed me over the edge. If he wanted to know more, he should ask Lena. His silence was heavy before he thanked me and hung up. I didn't hear from him again after that. But later that evening, a mutual friend of Lena's mentioned in passing that David hadn't gone back to their apartment. He had checked into a hotel instead. That was the first real sign that things were crumbling for Lena. Meanwhile, she was getting more desperate. Her texts started coming in nonstop, swinging between rage and pleading. One message was full of insults, calling me bitter and evil. The next, she was begging me to fix things, saying I had ruined her life. She didn't seem to grasp that there was no fixing this. Then the real blow came. Lena worked in public relations, where reputation was everything. While the engagement party scandal wasn't headline news, whispers about it spread among her social circles. Someone from her workplace, a friend of a friend, mentioned that the gossip was affecting how her bosses viewed her ability to manage PR crises. While they hadn't taken official action, the scrutiny was enough to put her on edge. No company wants an employee whose personal life is turning into a scandal. By the third day after the party, Lena was unraveling. She started deleting her social media posts, but it was too late. Screenshots had been taken. People were talking. Friends were distancing themselves. And David? He still hadn't gone home. Then came the family meeting. Our parents were done pretending this wasn't happening. They insisted we both come over to fix this mess. When I arrived, Lena was already there, sitting on the couch with puffy eyes and a tissue clutched in her hand. She barely looked at me. Our family home is a mid-century modern that my parents are way too proud of. The living room has these uncomfortable white leather couches that no one is actually allowed to sit on except for important occasions. Apparently, this qualified. My mom had even put out the fancy coasters that we only see at Christmas. The second I sat down, our mother launched into a speech about family, forgiveness, and how we just needed to move past this. My father was more direct. He said I should apologize to Lena and end all of this now. I just stared at them. I reminded them how Lena had spent months destroying my reputation. How she had laughed while making me a joke in front of our entire family. How she had enjoyed watching me become isolated. But now that she was on the receiving end, suddenly, it was all about family unity and letting things go. Lena burst into tears, shaking her head, claiming she never meant to hurt me. She sobbed about how she had just been venting in her journal, and how she didn't deserve to have her most personal thoughts exposed like that. She begged me to fix things, saying I had ruined everything. I didn't budge. I told her straight to her face, neither did you. Our parents didn't like that answer, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. As I left, my mother called after me, saying that I was being cruel. My father muttered that he had never raised us to be like this. But the thing was, I wasn't the one who had started this. Later that night, I got another message from one of Lena's closest friends. It was short. David told her he's reconsidering the wedding. Lena had spent years building a perfect life, making sure she always came out on top. And now, it was all slipping through her fingers. And for the first time, she had no way to spin it in her favor. David had gone completely silent. No texts, no calls, no explanations. He had checked into a hotel after the engagement party, but that wasn't the worst part. He wasn't coming home. Lena was spiraling. Every attempt to reach him was ignored. She left voicemails, sent long messages, and even tried calling from different numbers. Nothing. The silence was an answer in itself, and it was driving her into a full-blown panic. By the second day of being ignored, she snapped. She showed up at his apartment unannounced. A neighbor saw her pounding on the door, ringing the bell over and over again. Eventually, someone in the building let her inside, but David wasn't there. He had already anticipated this and was staying somewhere else. That only made her more desperate. Meanwhile, our parents were in damage control mode, but their definition of fixing things was the same as always, blaming me. They called one after another, demanding that I apologize. Not because they thought I was wrong, but because they wanted to make this problem disappear. "This is getting out of hand," my father said during one of these calls. I was at work, trying to finish a logo design that was already past deadline, And he called me 3 times in a row until I finally picked up. "She's your sister. You need to fix what you started." I refused. Lena had spent months tearing me down, ruining my reputation, and laughing while doing it. She had made sure I had no support, no way to defend myself. And now that she was facing real consequences, she expected me to step in and clean up her mess? Not happening. David, however, wasn't done asking questions. He reached out again. Though this time, he wasn't angry. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know if I thought Lena had been deliberately cruel or if this was just insecurity eating her alive. I didn't give him a long answer. I didn't need to. I just asked him one simple thing: would she have apologized if I hadn't exposed her? He didn't reply right away, but I already knew what he was thinking. If I had never found that journal, if I had never fought back, Lena would still be mocking me, still convincing everyone I was a liar. She would have never admitted to anything. She would have never stopped. David's parents, who had remained mostly neutral, were starting to take notice of how Lena was handling the fallout. The social media outbursts, the desperate calls, the unexpected apartment visit, it wasn't painting her in the best light. They were the kind of people who valued composure, control, and responsibility. Lena was showing none of that. They didn't tell David to break up with her. They didn't need to. They just let him know they were concerned. That was enough. Then came the friends. David's friends had always been polite toward Lena, but they had never been close to her. After the breakup, when David started confiding in them more, they began sharing their own observations, little things they had noticed over the years but hadn't spoken up about before. It wasn't that they had hidden concerns, rather, they had dismissed small red flags until now when they could finally see the full picture. How Lena would isolate him from certain friendships, making sure he spent more time with her friends than his own. How she subtly pushed him to change jobs, to move to a different neighborhood, to cut off old habits under the pretense of maturing. None of it had seemed controlling at the time, but looking at it all together, it was clear. Lena had always been about control, and now she was losing it. Then something unexpected happened. An aunt, one who had dismissed me, one who had laughed at Lena's jokes, called me. Her voice was quieter than usual, no trace of the smugness I was used to. "I've been thinking about everything," she said hesitantly. "And I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." I believed her because it was easier. Because it was more comfortable. But now, after everything, I can't ignore the truth anymore. Lena, meanwhile, was still trying to undo the damage. She announced a last-minute romantic surprise trip for her and David. A getaway to reconnect. A desperate attempt to make it seem like everything was fine. David didn't respond. I didn't hear about the breakup directly. I found out through a cousin who messaged me late at night with a simple text: "It's over." David ended it. Apparently, David had met with her in person. He didn't drag it out, didn't leave room for false hope. He told her straight up that the wedding was off and that he needed space, permanently. She had broken down, begging, crying, making promises, but he didn't budge. This wasn't just a temporary fight. This was the end. For years, Lena had controlled every narrative, every situation, every relationship. But now, she had lost the one thing she couldn't afford to lose. I sat with that thought for a long time, wondering what her next move would be. Something told me this wasn't over yet. Lena didn't disappear quietly. She wasn't the kind of person to reflect, accept responsibility, or move on gracefully. Instead, she convinced herself that I was the reason her engagement had fallen apart. If I hadn't read her journal, if I hadn't exposed her, if I hadn't ruined her reputation, she'd still have David, her job security, and the life she had carefully built. None of this was her fault. It was mine. Our parents clung to that belief too. They saw their eldest daughter crumbling, her life falling apart in real time, and instead of holding her accountable, they did what they always did, defended her. They called again, more urgent this time, demanding that I fix what I broke. Our mother insisted I should publicly clarify things, tell people that I had exaggerated, that it was all a misunderstanding. When I refused, our father stepped in, saying I had gone too far and that it was time to clean up the mess. I ignored them. But Lena wasn't going to wait for me to respond. She showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday night when I was in my pajamas, binge-watching Great British Bake Off and stress-eating Doritos with mocha curled up next to me. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess, her eyes red like she hadn't slept. The moment I opened the door, she launched into a rant, demanding that I make things right. She claimed that if I had any decency left, I would go to David and explain that I had twisted everything, that I had read things out of context, that I had made her seem worse than she actually was. She expected me to undo everything with a few words. I didn't. I told her the truth. She never cared when she was destroying my credibility, so why should I care now? She had no problem lying about my mental health, making sure no one took me seriously. But now that she was facing consequences, she suddenly wanted fairness? She scoffed, flipping back to her usual arrogance, claiming that she wasn't actually affected, that she didn't even care about David or what people thought. But then the cracks started to show. She was losing control. Her job was on the line. Her social circle was shrinking. The people who had always blindly defended her were hesitating. She wasn't untouchable anymore. But instead of facing that reality, she tried something else. Pity. She suddenly softened, voice trembling, claiming she was struggling mentally, that she needed help. She said she had been overwhelmed, that she had made mistakes, but that she was still my sister. She needed support. She needed me. I didn't fall for it. The moment I told her I wasn't playing along, her face hardened. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I didn't hear from her after that, but I knew she wasn't done. She turned her desperation toward David. He had already made it clear he needed space, but that didn't stop her from bombarding him with messages, voice notes, emails. At first, she tried apologizing. Then she tried shifting the blame, saying I had set her up and that I had always wanted to ruin her life. When he didn't respond, she got angrier, accusing him of being weak, of abandoning her over something so small. He stayed quiet. Then, after days of this, he sent her one final message: "You need to move on. I will not be manipulated." Then he blocked her. That sent her spiraling even further. Unable to contact him directly, she resorted to messaging his friends, using different numbers, and even trying to reach him through his workplace, anything to get a response. She couldn't claim the journal was fake, but she could twist the details. She started telling people that I had exaggerated what I read, that I had selectively chosen passages to make her look bad, that I had intentionally left out things that would have made her seem more sympathetic. And for a moment, it worked. Some family members hesitated, wondering if she had a point. Maybe I had taken things too far. Maybe I had wanted revenge more than I wanted the truth. But then, the truth came out anyway. David, who had remained silent in public this whole time, finally spoke up. He made a simple statement to friends and family, making it clear that his engagement had ended because of Lena's behavior, not because of me. He confirmed that he had seen me reading from an actual journal at the party, that I hadn't fabricated anything. That was the final nail in the coffin. The family members who had been holding on to doubt let go of it. The people still defending her started backing away. Even her closest friends weren't as vocal as they used to be. Lena's last attempt to control the story had completely backfired. And now, she had nothing left. The fallout didn't just affect Lena. It spread through the entire family like a slow-moving disaster, forcing everyone to pick a side whether they wanted to or not. At first, our parents were furious with me. They had demanded apologies, tried to guilt-trip me into fixing what I had done, but when they realized I wouldn't budge, their approach shifted. They started speaking more carefully, trying to frame themselves as victims caught in the middle of a conflict they had no control over. "It's been so hard for us," they said during our last conversation, which happened over coffee at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between our houses. "We're being forced to pick sides. If you would just let things go, we could all move past this." But they weren't being forced to do anything. They had spent years ignoring Lena's behavior, enabling it, protecting her from the consequences of her actions. And now that everything had come crashing down, they wanted me to be the one to make it easier for them. I refused. I told them that if they chose to cut me off over this, it would only prove they never truly supported me. That ended the conversation. They didn't push after that, but they didn't apologize either. Instead, they tried to balance their stance, still defending Lena in private while subtly distancing themselves from her in social settings. They didn't outright blame her, but they also stopped making excuses when family members questioned her behavior. Meanwhile, David had completely removed himself from the situation. He wasn't dating, wasn't seeking revenge, wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just moving on, focusing on his career and his own life. That should have been enough for Lena to do the same, but it wasn't. She still stalked his social media, looking for signs that he was suffering, waiting for proof that he regretted leaving her. Instead, she saw the opposite. He was traveling, spending time with friends, going to events, thriving in ways he hadn't when he was with her. That was what set her off, not the breakup itself, not the engagement being over, but the fact that he was doing better without her. That was when she showed up at my door again. This time, she came with an apology. Her voice was softer. Her words carefully chosen. She stood in my doorway clutching a peace offering, a box of those fancy macarons from the bakery downtown that I love but can never justify spending $4 each on. "I've been reflecting," she said, her eyes downcast in a way I'd never seen before. "I'm sorry for everything. I've been struggling and didn't know how to express it. I never meant to hurt you so badly." She painted herself as someone who had made mistakes but was ready to change. I almost believed her, until slowly she shifted the conversation. She started saying how the real problem wasn't what she did, it was how I had handled it. "If you had just talked to me in private," she said, her voice still gentle but with an edge creeping in, "none of this would have happened. David would still be here. If you had any compassion, you would at least make a statement to clear my name. It wasn't an apology. It was another manipulation. The moment I refused, her mask slipped right back into place. Her expression hardened, and she left without another word, leaving the box of macaron on my welcome mat. I gave them to my neighbor's kids. No way was I eating those, knowing Lena, they were probably poisoned with laxatives or something. It wasn't long before our parents started distancing themselves from her too. Not because they suddenly realized I was right, but because she kept making things worse for herself. She wouldn't stop talking about it, wouldn't stop playing the victim, wouldn't stop trying to fix a reputation that couldn't be fixed. Every family gathering became an impromptu therapy session where she'd try to rehash everything, and honestly, people were just tired of the drama. By the time they finally tried to rebuild a relationship with me, I was already wary. My dad called on my birthday, awkwardly asking if I wanted to grab lunch. My mom sent a care package with homemade cookies and a card that said thinking of you but nothing else. They weren't siding with me because they had seen the truth. They were just tired of being associated with Lena's mess. I kept my distance, only interacting when necessary. The holidays were especially tense. We did a weird rotation system where I would come for Christmas Eve and Lena would be there Christmas Day. Thanksgiving was split between lunch at one house and dinner at another. It was exhausting, but it was better than nothing. As for Lena, she tried to start over in a different city. Our cousin mentioned she got a new job at a smaller PR firm about 2 hours away. But the damage followed her. Not because people actively sought to ruin her, but because she couldn't let go of the paranoia. She was constantly checking if people knew about her past, obsessing over her online presence, avoiding social events just in case someone recognized her. According to mutual friends, she would Google herself weekly, scroll through all of David's social media accounts, and draft emails to him that she never sent. She became her own worst enemy. Even when she could have had a fresh start, she destroyed it before anyone else could. I, on the other hand, moved on. I got promoted at work, started going to a support group for people with depression, and even adopted a second cat, a one-eyed black rescue I named Pirate who surprisingly gets along great with Mocha. For the first time in years, I was free from Lena's toxicity, from the endless cycle of her trying to control everything. The family would never be the same, but I was okay with that. My relationships with the relatives who stuck by me grew stronger. The ones who didn't, well, I realized I didn't need them anyway. And even now, years later, people still talk about it. Guests from the engagement party still whisper about the therapy journal incident, the scandal that never quite died, the night that changed everything. Lena will never live it down. Last I heard, she's dating some guy who doesn't know any of our family or friends, probably so she can create whatever narrative she wants about her past. She still posts those picture-perfect Instagram photos with inspirational quotes about rising above and staying true to yourself, which is rich coming from her. As for me? I still have my bad days. Depression doesn't just disappear. But I'm doing better than I ever thought possible. I'm stable, I'm surrounded by people who believe me, and most importantly, I know my truth. And no one, especially not Lena, can take that away from me. TLDR, my sister told everyone I was faking my depression, destroyed my credibility with our family, then I found her secret therapy journal and read it at her engagement party. Her fiancé left her, her reputation was ruined, and now she has to live with the consequences of her actions while I'm finally free. Edit, wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the supportive comments. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I still have the journal, it's locked away and I haven't looked at it since that night. 2. No, I don't regret what I did. I've thought about it a lot, and while I'm not proud of how public it was, I believe she needed to face consequences. 3. For those asking about David, last I heard he's dating someone new and seems happy. We're not in contact. 4. Thank you to everyone sharing their own mental health stories. It means more than you know to not feel alone in this. Edit 2, some people are calling me the for violating her privacy. Look, I get it. Reading someone's journal isn't something I'd normally do. But after months of her systematically destroying my credibility and mental health support system? Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Judge me if you want, but unless you've walked in my shoes, you don't know what it's like to have your own family turn against you because of someone else's lies.